Hello everyone, my name is Anitsu, and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT9, and BT9 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be a new iteration on Diaboromon. So Diaboromon is kind of an off-meta deck. It's not really going to be a hyper tier 1 meta competitive deck, but it's still a deck that I think it can still compete in the BT9 landscape if it's built and teched correctly. And I think with BT9 being more of an OTK focused format, we need to lean into those strengths, which Diaboromon definitely has the ability to be relatively aggressive the turn we go into our Diaboromon with either the promo Diaboromon or BT5 Diaboromon. So, going into the deck profile, starting off with the Digitama, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Tsumemon. So, Tsumemon is in the deck just to act as that DP boosting Digitama to ensure that our Digimon is going to be as strong as it possibly can when it's going to be hitting into the opponent's security. Although I think the draw Digitama is really nice, it's just we're not necessarily trying to utilize our raising area, move out, and swing as often as we would want, so I think that having the greater impact when we're using our Diaboromon is a little bit more important, because all we need for the DP boost is just other Diaboromons on the field, which we could easily make with us being a token-based deck and having a Tamer that helps set this up. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Hagurumon. So this is a tech or flex spot for the deck, and this could really be anything you want it to be, but I do like having Hagurumon just to try to line up our DNA Digivolutions and some of our when Digivolving abilities on our level 4s a little bit easier and be able to build on the field, while we're also trying to build in the raising. So what Hagurumon is doing is he just costs 2 to hard play, and that's really the only thing we're looking to gain out of the card, just being able to easily set up a rookie. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Keramon. So this is going to be the BT2 version of Keramon, and this is just helping with the overall card draw when we're actually going into our Diaboromon to be able to find whatever other parts and pieces that we would want to use. So his ability states that when you play another Digimon with the same name as this Digimon, then we get to draw 1 card. It's not limited to once per turn, so the more tokens that we create, the more cards we're going to draw as a result. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Keramon. So this is the BT05 version of Keramon, and this is going to be the deck's dedicated digger, where we get to hard play him and look at the top 5 cards of our deck and add 1 unidentified Digimon and 1 Arata Sanada from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So it's just looking for basically our parts and pieces to be able to not only set up our field with our Tamer, but to line up whatever Digimon we need for our stack to be able to make as much of an impactful turn when we move our main Digimon out of raising onto the field as we possibly can, acting as a good consistency tool. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Keramon. So this is going to be the EX1 version of Keramon, and this is just to help with the overall DP management of our Digimon. So during our turn, for each other Digimon we have in play, then this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP, so the more tokens that we create, the stronger our Digimon will become, so it'll have an easier time punching the opponent's security as hard and safely as it possibly can. Next, onto the level 4s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Kurisarimon. So this is the BT2 version of Kurisarimon, and this is a good card to help with our memory management to allow us to extend our plays when we Digivolve up into our Diaboromon. So it has the nice inheritable ability where during your turn, when you play another Digimon with the same name as this Digimon, then we get to gain 1 memory. So if we combo this with the BT2 Keramon, we'll be able to draw lots of cards and gain lots of memory to make as much of an impactful turn as we possibly can. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Kurisarimon. So this is the BT05 version of Kurisarimon, and this is a good card to not only just help set up our field, but to act as another really aggressive card to use with our Diaboromon stack. So what this card is doing is it has a nice when Digivolving ability native to him, where we get to play 1 Arata Sanada for free if we don't already have one in play. So it's just a good card to use where if we hard play a Keramon or Hagurumon, to just Digivolve right away into Kurisarimon to be able to set up the Arata Sanada and try to help set up our DNA Digivolution play into Kimeramon. Then its inheritable ability is really good to help with the overall aggression, where during your turn, all of your other Digimon with the same name as this Digimon gain the rush ability, so all of the tokens that we're going to be spawning off of our Diaboromons and off of our Arata Sanadas, so we could attack with them right away. And then the last level 4 of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Kurisarimon. So this is another flex spot for the deck. You could really tech and customize this card to be whatever you feel like you need it to be, but I do like Kurisarimon just adding some extra protection for our main stack. So it has the nice ability where during all turns, all of your other Digimon with the same name as this Digimon gain Decoy Black and White. So if we're unable to find our delicate plan to try to turn off the opponent's options, this is just a good way to try to use our tokens to help keep our main Diaboromon stack alive as best as we possibly can. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Infermon. So I've been going back and forth if this should be the BT2 version of Infermon or if it should be the BT5 version of Infermon. But either way, Infermon is pretty good just to try to help speed our evolutions. So what this version of Infermon is doing is it's allowing us to reduce the cost of our Digivolution into a Diaboromon by 1, making our Diaboromon a little bit more efficient to Digivolve into if we're using this card. But as far as the main Infermon that we want to use, it's going to be 4 copies of the Classic Collection EX1 version of Infermon. So we're not necessarily trying to use its ability where during the opponent's turn once per turn, if they would Digivolve into a level 5 or higher Digimon, gain a memory, although it's really nice if we just have one set up already on our field. But what we're trying to gain out of the ability is its secondary ability where during all turns, all of your other Digimon with the same name as this Digimon get plus 2000 DP, acting as a really good DP boost. But again, if you wanted to try to include the warp potential off of BT5 Infermon, then that's another really good card to utilize in the deck. It's just I don't know exactly which one is better, depending on how the meta shapes up. But as far as the other level 5 of the deck, I'm going to be including 2 copies of Kimeramon. So Kimeramon is a really good card to help fix our stack and use our Digimon on our field a little bit more effectively than some other decks. So the fact that we could DNA Digivolve him for 0 on top of just any 2 level 4s makes him really, really appealing to line up multiple level 4s in our inheritable abilities to try to gain the most out of our Digimon. So we could line up a play where we have both Kurisarimon with Rush and the memory gain underneath our Digimon to be able to make our Diaboromon as impactful as we possibly can, and that's really the intention of this card, just because our level 5s don't really have that great of inheritable abilities. Then on top of that, he has a nice when Digivolving ability where we get to place a level 5 or lower Digimon from our trash underneath this Digimon's Digivolution source, then up to 4 of the opponent's Digimon get minus 1000 DP for each of this Digimon's colors until the end of the opponent's turn. So most of the time it's only going to be reducing the opponent's Digimon by 2k, which is okay. It's not super relevant, but it's nice to have nonetheless. And on top of that, his secondary ability we're almost never going to use because we don't have enough colors that we're going to be playing to make it useful. We're just using him again to be able to help fix our stack with our level 4 and lower inheritable abilities to be able to make our Diaboromon as impactful as we possibly can if the situation presents itself. Next, on to the level 6s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Diaboromon. So this is the promo Diaboromon, and this is a fantastic card to use with a wide field of Diaboromon tokens, because his ability states that for each Diaboromon we have in play, then this Digimon gains security attack +1, so the more tokens we have in play, the stronger his security attack is going to be able to try to OTK the opponent with. So he naturally is going to have 2 just because he's counting himself, so we just need at least 3 to 4 other tokens in play outside of any chips to be able to OTK the opponent. And then the last level 6 of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Diaboromon. So this is the BT5 Diaboromon, and this Diaboromon is good with the BT5 version of Kurisarimon, just because it could help spawn us a whole bunch of tokens to be able to OTK the opponent potentially, with just spamming a whole bunch of tokens on the field, giving them all rush, and attacking all in one turn. So his Wind Digivolving ability rewards us with that by allowing us to play a Diaboromon token for free. So that's just really good for extra token generation. And then the last Digimon of the deck, and only level 7 of the deck, is going to be one copy of Dexmon. So Dexmon is just an absolutely insane card for basically any deck to run, and this deck it can run him in a couple of different ways, just because the promo Diaboromon is actually a black Digimon, in case we actually want to use him to Digivolve up into a Dexmon. But most of the time, we just want to hardplay Dexmon, because he has an ability to reduce his play cost by 3 for each of the opponent's Digimon and Tamers in play. Then the fact that we could use his on-play and when digivolving ability in both forms is really good, because we get to de-digivolve 1 on all of the opponent's Digimon and delete all of their Digimon that's level 4 or lower, trying to board wipe the opponent. Then at the end of the opponent's turn, once per turn, we get to delete all of the opponent's Digimon with the lowest play cost to try to control the opponent's field even more. Next, on to the options, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Kongou. So Kongou is just a really good card to try to help prevent the opponent from doing specific actions. So the actions we're trying to prevent them from doing is that you stop the opponent from recovering or attacking with their Digimon with a play cost of 7 or less. So that could shut off basically any hybrid level of aggression. And against those pesky yellow decks that like to recover a lot, it also turns off the ability where they can recover, so they're just stuck with the amount of security that they have, allowing us to line up our power play to be able to try to OTK even the strongest of yellow decks. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Digivolution Plugin S. So Digivolution Plugin S is a really good card to allow us to try to play our Diaboromon as efficiently as we possibly can. So if we don't have the BT2 version of Infermon to use, then that's a good opportunity to allow us to use Digivolution Plugin S to essentially make the Digivolution into either of our Diaboromons, cost 2, just because the option costs 2, and the option states that we get a draw 1 card, which is already pretty good, and we get a Digivolve one of our Digimon into a Digimon from our hand with a Digivolution cost of 3 or less for free, so it's just playing the option is basically paying for the evolution. And we could use this card in any deck just because it has the ability where if we have a Tamer in play, we could use this card ignoring its color requirements, allowing even us in Diaboromon to be able to play a plugin. Then on top of that, it has a nice security ability that adds to the overall consistency of the deck, where we get to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck and add 1 Digimon card from among them into our hand, place the rest in the bottom, and add this card into our hand to try to help line up our power play as best and efficiently as we possibly can. And then the last option of the deck is going to be 2 copies of A Delicate Plan to just try to turn off the opponent's security threats as best as we possibly can. So it has the main ability where one of our Digimon gains the effect where this Digimon doesn't trigger the security abilities of options that are checked with this card until the end of the turn. So if we're just trying to punch the opponent's security and we have just enough DP to clear almost any security threats and we turn off their options, then it just helps us be able to OTK the opponent even safer than we normally would be able to. And then as far as the Tamers go, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Arata Sanada to help with the overall memory management, just because as long as we have a Digimon with unidentified in its traits in our trash, then we get to gain 1 memory, and the more Aratas we have on the field, the more memory we could possibly gain. Then on top of that, he has a nice secondary ability that we definitely need to take advantage of to be able to make our promo Diaboromon swing for as much security as he possibly can, where when our Digimon digivolves into a Diaboromon, then we get to suspend this Tamer to play 1 Diaboromon token for free. So again, the more Aratas that we have on the field, the more tokens we'll be able to spawn, so that way we could try to punch the opponent's security as hard as we possibly can. And then the last card and last Tamer of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Hiro. So Hiro is going to be that red source for us to play A Delicate Plan with, and on top of that, Hiro is going to be the deck's dedicated memory fixing Tamer. So if our memory is ever less than 3, he'll just hard set us to 3, so that way we could try to make our plays as consistent as we possibly can. Then on top of that, the benefit for using Hiro is the fact that he works with any level 5 or higher Digimon, including our Diaboromons, where when we attack it, we get to suspend When we attack with a Digimon with Gamamon in its Digivolution source, or a level 5 or higher Digimon, then we get to suspend this Tamer to have one of our Digimon gain plus 2000 DP for the turn to increase the overall DP of our Diaboromon. So between this, the Keramon, and the Tsumemon, we could have our Diaboromon easily hit 16 to 17k, which is more than enough to be able to clear any Digimon that could possibly be in the security, as long as the security isn't buffed and we don't hit a Mega. But in terms of other cards you could think about utilizing in the deck and try to tech the deck to be whatever you need it to be, we could run Junkmon, just because his on-delete ability to gain a memory actually could be relevant if we're going to be trying to line up an Armageddon play. And speaking of our Armageddons, then we also could think about using Armageddon for some extra aggression to just sack the Diaboromon once it's all used up and gain an extra attack that way if we have enough memory. The Altern's ability to turn off the opponent's level 7 Digimon is pretty okay, but it's not going to come up that often, but it still could be relevant. And a really good card to line up that combo play is Parabolic Junk, just to gain some extra memory when we're going to be deleting our Diaboromon to be able to hard play our Armageddon for that extra attack. So we can combo that with Junkmon to be able to basically sacrifice that Diaboromon to make going into the Armageddon essentially free. Or if you wanted to, because we're running red and you know that you're going to be ending the game, you also could be using Gravity Crush to the same effect. But speaking of our other options cards in red that we could think about using, if you wanted to run some extra defensive options in the security, then we do have lots of different removal options between red and black that we could use, like Gaia Force and like Ultimate Flare. Or if you wanted to, you could try to use various other plugins to make your attacks more safe, or you could even use something like Lightning Joust if you know your security is going to be less than the opponent's, to be able to increase the overall DP and damage that you could possibly deal with your main Diaboromon. Then if you really wanted to try to play the deck a little bit more defensively, we do have Shademon as a good security threat to act as a blocker, even though it won't be able to attack. Sometimes you knowing the opponent has the ability to multi-attack, and Shademon coming out could actually save you from lethal positions sometimes. And similarly to that, we also have the promo Kurisarimon to act as a solid blocker to try to wall out some of the opponent's early game aggression if they're going in that direction, or try to stop some of their potential OTK just by having a blocker sit on the field. And if we are lucky enough to be able to line up certain lines of play, then the Classic Collection version of Kurisarimon to be able to gain some extra attacks actually could be pretty helpful on helping with our overall damage output. So if you don't feel like the decoy is worth running, then you could easily swap that out just to try to increase the overall aggression with the classic Kurisarimon. And then, as I stated before, I'm still kind of playing around with the level 5 slots, so if you wanted to, the Warp Infermon actually isn't that bad, just to try to help turbo our evolutions, just because the usual transaction between going from a level 3 to a level 5 is 5 memory, where just warping up into the Infermon, that transaction is 4 memory, so it's just trying to be more memory efficient in various different ways, plus the on-delete ability isn't that bad on gaining us an extra Diaboromon token that we could also shove underneath our Kimeramon. So it's just another really good Tekken tool that we could think about utilizing, again, depending on how the deck is playing and the types of matchups you feel like it would help against. Then we do have the other Diaboromons that we could think about running, so if you wanted to, you could run the Classic Collection Diaboromon for that security threat of having an extra Diaboromon coming out, even though it is a token, but the benefit for doing so is if we have Diaboromon already on our field, this version, then that Diaboromon token does become a blocker to try to help shut off some of the opponent's aggression. Then Black has some really good, well-rounded option cards just to allow us to do different things with our Diaboromon and to be able to use different combo of abilities to try to, again, tech for whatever the meta is asking us to tech for. So if we want to, we could run Breath of the Gods for some extra protection and reboot. Or if we wanted to go full punch factor, then we also have Final Zubagon Punch to use. If we're using it in combination with our promo Diaboromon with any form of DP boost, then it's easily going to be able to hit that 13k to be able to gain blocker, reboot, and an extra security attack. And then another cute tech card you could think about trying out is going to be Pride Memory Boost, just because some of our Kurisarimons and all of our Keramons are 4-costed or below, to try to play them for free off of Pride Memory Boost, and this is still just a memory boost to help with our instant tempo later on. But like I said, there's just a lot of room for experimentation that should be done in order to make this deck as competitive as it possibly can be. I don't think this is going to be a tier 1 deck, but this just kind of highlights that with enough creativity, you can make even older or outdated decks more playable. But it's this type of experimentation that's what draws me to Digimon and doing lots of deck building, even if I know the deck isn't going to be tier 1 hyper meta competitive. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.